welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from Westbrook Brewing Company out of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. We've had several of their beers over the years, though I feel like it's been at least 6, 7, 8 months since I've last reviewed one of theirs, and typically I have gotten some of their big stouts, and today is no exception. We're jumping into a 2022 release of their Mexican Cake. That is an Imperial Stout they release yearly. This specific one clocks in at 10.5% ABV, and this one has been brewed with cacao nibs, vanilla, cinnamon, and habanero peppers. So yeah, this is another one of those classic kind of, you can almost call it a Mexican-inspired hot chocolate, etc. type of beer, but this one they call Mexican Cake. So yeah, it's got all of these hallmarks, these similar kind of profiles. We've had a lot of beers with similar additives. So we're going to jump in and see what Westbrook's interpretation on this ingredient list is. In terms of label art, very clean design. Says Westbrook, tells you a lot about the beer. Has an image of a slice of cake. So very dark, but it gets you in the mood. So we're going to get this cracked. This is a very large bottle. We are not going to get this whole thing in the old trusty stout glass here, but we're just going to get it poured gently. Oh, it's very dark. It's very thick. So I'm going to try to get right up over this for a bit of aggression. Give it a chance to form a head. We'll back off right about there because it is quite thick. It may need some room. All right, so yes, it did make indeed a mess on my table. That's okay. I took a quick minute. I grabbed some cleaning materials and got this all cleaned up. So sorry about that, but it did go over the top. Not a knock on the beer. I didn't know exactly how aggressive to get because it was so thick. Look, I always want to give the beer a chance to form a head and to have it retain a head. And if that requires me, making a mess on my table, so be it. It's a small price to pay, but it did indeed form a very wonderful, lush, thick, creamy head on this beer. So visually, yeah, absolutely pitch black, as you would expect of a big 10.5% Imperial Stout. It looks fantastic. It did form a nice, rich, thick, creamy head. So we're going to get right up over this for a sniff. Wow, yeah. Okay, so there is a big aroma coming off of this. This is not a barrel-aged beer, but you can really smell, in particular, the vanilla, the cinnamon, the cacao, and the habanero. So all the additives they put in this beer are really quite prevalent on the nose. Yeah, there's a slight sweetness on the nose, though I don't expect that this is indeed going to be a sweet beer. They didn't mention anything about lactose, so I think this is going to be a rich, roasty beer owing to these big, deep, rich, dark malts. So it smells fantastic. It looks fantastic. It formed a wonderful head that's still holding true, a nice, thick, velvety pad there. Let's just jump right in and see what Mexican Cake 2022 release is all about. Oh man, that is a big beer. Wow. That is a big stout, guys. It feels way bigger. The intensity of flavor, the weight, and just the mouthfeel of it as well. Everything about this screams bigger than 10.5%. Make no mistake, 10.5% is not a low ABV for any beer. And yeah, this is an Imperial Stout, of course, and it's just 10.5%. The weight on this beer is extremely heavy. It feels very weighty. I would say this is at least bordering on the high end of medium heavy to heavy, and at 10.5%, it punches way above its weight. For the mouthfeel, it's got a boatload of resistance, and this is one that feels extremely silky, velvety smooth when you agitate it around the palate. So you can really feel that resistance, but it's just got this silky smooth quality to it as you swish it around. It's absolutely incredible. Big beer, big body, nice mouthfeel. You can tell it's a big beer and it feels like a big beer. So the flavor profile. This is very nice. This is exactly what I was hoping it would be. There's no sweetness on this. There's a little bit of a suggestion of sweetness on the nose, but it doesn't translate into the glass. There's no sweetness at all. Indeed, this is a rich, deep, dark, roasty beer. No lactose in sight, no sweetness in sight. Yes, it's got cacao nibs. Yes, it's got vanilla. Yes, it's got cinnamon. Yes, they added habaneros. All of those are equally present in the flavor profile, just as they are on the nose, but there's no sweetness in sight. So the first thing that you get when you swallow is indeed this big kick of cacao. And it's kind of a mix of cacao and cinnamon and vanilla all at once in tandem with this underpinning, rich, roasty quality coming out of the malt bill. So whatever specific malts they used, they're very earthy, they're very roasty. This is another one of those that kind of puts me in mind of the same qualities you get on a French roast coffee bean, but there's no suggestion of a coffee flavor here. It's just that earthy intensity of roast that comes out of the malt bill paired with that cinnamon, that vanilla, and the cacao nibs. It's very chocolate dominant. This is a very chocolate dominant beer. The cinnamon and the vanilla are just kind of an added bonus. That's rare. Vanilla is a very pungent ingredient. It's one that I think takes a lot more deft hand than many brewers use. Here, they were really good with their ratios. So everything has its own voice. There's nothing that kind of leads in the front. But where does this pop in with the habanero? That's another added ingredient. Well, behind all of this, you get this wonderful, nice warming sensation. This is not one that I would call aggressively spicy, but it's enough that you can actually taste the flavor of the flesh of the pepper itself. So it does taste distinctly of habaneros. They have a slight kind of fruity flavor to them, but it pairs well with this nice earthiness, and it is a nice counterbalance. And they added enough in there that you get this nice heat sensation as well. So the total package on this beer is a very weighty beer that's velvety when you move it around the palate. When you swallow, it feels big. It feels like a big beer. You get a ton of earthy, roasty, kind of charry underpinnings from this malt bill. You get vanilla, you get cinnamon, and you get a nice kick of heat and this slight fruity accent from the habaneros. The whole beer really works cohesively as a whole, and I gotta say the balance on this in particular is fantastic. This is a beer style with added ingredients that would be really easy to have out of whack, but Westbrook absolutely nailed it. So guys, I'm gonna jump back in as always for a second sip. We're gonna let everything re-intensify, make sure I didn't miss anything. Then we will talk specifically about the finish since we already talked about the balance. But I wanna make sure I didn't miss anything on first sip. So take two. So weighty, it's so silky smooth, just immediate, big roast, earthy, char, roasty malt, cinnamon, and vanilla. They pop immediately, all at the same time. It's just a big boom. And it really does take kind of 3 to 5 seconds before that intensity slowly starts to peel back a little bit. And then you get this slight fruity underpinning from the habaneros that are in there. I'm tasting peppers, and then the heat slowly starts to come in from underneath and build up and build up and build up. Like I said, it's not over the top. It's enough that you know that the peppers are in there, but it doesn't make itself the star of the show. It's not trying to steal impetus from any of the other additives or the base beer itself. This beer is all about the ingenuity of the combination of ingredients, but much more key, this beer is all about balance, guys. This is a beautifully balanced beer. I've had a lot of big Imperial Stouts with similar or the same additive ingredient bill. This is one of those top tier ones that really sets itself apart. It's got a very clear vision of what they wanted the end product to come out. And the balance on everything in here is just top notch. I would not tweak a thing about this. Everything has its own voice. You can taste it clearly, distinctly. There's a lot of ebbing and flowing, and everything really comes together to make a cohesive whole. Nothing's vying for attention. It all just works together. That is a hallmark of a beautifully balanced and put together beer which separates the wheat from the chaff, for my money. So yeah, the balance is fantastic. In terms of the finish, this is not a barrel-aged variant, but the finish on this beer is significantly longer than your average Imperial Stout. Even for other Imperial Stouts in the similar 10 to 11 ABV range. It's a high ABV beer. Yes, it is. And it does have additives, and those additives really do pay dividends to driving out the finish. But it isn't just the added cinnamon, vanilla, and peppers. It's the underlying roasty malt bill itself. It's quite intense, and it does linger on the palate. There's no suggestion whatsoever of dryness when you're drinking this. It's really thick, it's really viscous, it really does do a good job of coating the palate, and those flavors linger long after each sip. This is one of those beers that's at least 1.5 to 2.5 minutes on the end of each sip, and it still is quite clear that you're still tasting that last sip of beer you had. On this one, what drives it out to the end of the finish, it's the underpinning of the roast, and it's a slight suggestion of cinnamon and vanilla and habanero. So it again stays as equally balanced all the way to the end as it started when you first took your first sip. Guys, this is an absolutely delicious beer. I really enjoyed what Westbrook did here. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, count my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Westbrook Brewing Company's 2022 release of Mexican Cake, an Imperial Stout. This one clocks in at 10.5% ABV. Brewed with cacao nibs, vanilla, cinnamon, and habanero peppers. Westbrook is based in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. So this is the second time that I have had this Mexican Cake beer. This one was just as good as I remembered, though I don't recall exactly where the scores landed. The last time I tried it, this was a very good beer, and across the board, it did a tremendous job. Indeed, there was only a single category that did not get a perfect score, so we're going to jump straight to that category, and that is the aroma. So the aroma on this beer was really quite nice. You could get a lot of information out of it. It just wasn't quite as pungent as I expected. Now, I personally think that that might be in part to just how rich and thick and creamy the head was. Typically, the head is going to rush up and the carbonation is going to pop, and that is what's going to constantly release these nice aromatic elements to let you really get a good sense of it. This one I had to get up on it and sniff a little bit harder than you would, and as you saw, it formed a very thick, creamy head out of the bottle poured at home, not unlike pouring a Guinness off a nitro tap. So that can, make an impact, but we're talking a very razor's edge margin between perfect and not perfect. Indeed, I only docked 1 point here on the aroma. So the aroma does get a 9 out of 10, and that of course leaves a perfect 10 out of 10 in the remaining 9 categories. That's taste, body, mouthfeel, finish, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling/intangible, my subjective thoughts category, and example of style. So it does leave a total score on Westbrook Brewing's 2022 release of Mexican Cake as a 99 out of 100. Guys, this is near as perfect as we could just call it a perfect beer. This was excellent. I absolutely loved it. I remember liking this the first time, and yeah, this is one of those really good ones. It's a big, rich beer, kind of puts me in mind of a lot of these kind of Mexican chocolate, hot chocolate style beers. Absolutely fantastic, beautifully balanced, just great selection of ingredients and done right. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.